Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. In our last deep dive, we were right in the trenches, exploring the AI battlefield. Well, today, we're zooming way out. If every company has its own AI playbook, who exactly is writing the rulebook for the entire world? We're about to dive into the brand new global landscape of AI governance.
For years, the mantra in Silicon Valley and beyond has been move fast and break things. But let's be clear, that era of AI self-regulation is coming to a very abrupt end. As AI gets more and more powerful, as it weaves itself into the very fabric of our lives, governments are racing to write the rules. And that leads us to probably the most important question in tech today: who is setting the standards for our most powerful technology? This isn't just a policy debate. It's the story of a global effort to forge a consensus for our collective technological future.
Okay, so let's get right into it. Starting with what is easily the most ambitious regulatory effort on the planet, the European Union's AI Act. This thing is a sweeping, legally binding law that's designed to create one single, predictable set of rules for the entire EU market. And the core idea here isn't to stifle innovation, not at all. It's actually about building trust by making sure AI is safe and that it respects fundamental human rights from the get-go. Now, this slide gets at a really key concept you have to understand: the Brussels effect. The EU is a massive market, right? We're talking 450 million consumers. So if a global tech company wants to sell its AI products there, they have to follow the EU's AI Act. And think about it. Instead of building two different versions of their AI, one for Europe, one for everyone else, it is way cheaper and so much more efficient to just build one version that meets those high EU standards. And just like that, an EU regulation becomes the de facto global standard. We saw this exact playbook run with GDPR for data privacy, and believe me, we are seeing it happen all over again with AI.
The real heart of the AI Act is this risk-based pyramid, and it's a really clever way to be both comprehensive but also targeted. At the very top, you've got systems that pose an unacceptable risk. These are things that are a clear threat to our safety and our rights, and they're just banned, outright. We're talking about government-run social scoring, manipulative subliminal tech, and most uses of real-time biometric scanning in public spaces. The message here is crystal clear. Some uses of AI are just fundamentally incompatible with a democratic society. Period.
So the next tier down is high risk, and this is where the act really starts to bite. The areas this covers are incredibly sensitive: AI that's managing a power grid, an algorithm diagnosing medical conditions, software that's screening job applicants, or a system calculating your credit score. If you're providing these kinds of systems, you are facing some seriously strict obligations before you can even think about going to market. We're talking rigorous risk assessments, proving you have high-quality and unbiased training data, and keeping exhaustive documentation. You basically need a safety certification to even operate. All right, now let's cross the Atlantic and see how the United States is tackling AI governance. And it is a stark contrast. While the EU is acting like a top-down architect, designing this huge legal structure, the US has gone for a more bottoms-up, voluntary strategy. It's acting more like a coach who's providing a playbook. And the centerpiece of that playbook is the AI Risk Management Framework, or RMF, from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, what we all know as NIST. And this table just brilliantly illustrates those fundamentally different philosophies. The EU AI Act, that's law. It's got massive fines for non-compliance, and it's focused on protecting citizen rights. The NIST RMF, on the other hand, is a voluntary guide. It's a how-to manual that's all about giving organizations a solid process for managing risk. The whole US approach is designed to be flexible, really trusting that the market and the basic need for customer trust will drive companies to adopt best practices without needing rigid top-down legislation. The NIST framework itself is built around these four core functions that operate in a continuous cycle. Govern is all about establishing a culture of risk management that starts at the very top. Map is about really understanding the context and the potential impacts of an AI system. Measure involves developing the right metrics to analyze and track the risks you've identified, like, say, auditing for bias. And finally, manage is your response. It's allocating the resources to mitigate those risks based on everything you've just learned. The framework also outlines these really key traits of what makes an AI system trustworthy. You're looking at things like, is it valid and reliable? Is it safe, secure, transparent, and accountable? Can we actually explain its decisions? And is it fair? This isn't just some philosophical wish list, it's a super practical checklist for developers trying to build AI that people can actually trust. And it shows that, while the methods are really different, the desired outcomes in both the US and the EU are remarkably similar. Okay, so we've got the EU's top-down rulebook and the US's bottom-up playbook. But for either of these to actually work in the real world, everyone needs to be speaking the same technical language. And that's where this third, absolutely critical layer comes in: international technical standards from bodies like the ISO and the IEC. I want you to think of these standards as creating a kind of Rosetta Stone for the entire global AI ecosystem. They provide the shared definitions, the agreed-upon methodologies for, well, everything. Without a standard, a term like AI robustness could mean one thing in Berlin and something completely different in Silicon Valley. These standards create the essential technical plumbing that allows all these regulations and frameworks to actually function on a global scale. And the single most important standard you need to be watching in the AI space is this one: ISO/IEC 42001. This is a huge deal. Why? Because it's designed to be the ISO 9001 for AI, that globally recognized standard for quality management. Achieving 42001 certification is going to be the signal that an organization has a systematic, auditable process for AI governance. It is the practical bridge that connects those high-level principles to a company's day-to-day operations. So despite all these different approaches, we've got laws, we've got frameworks, we've got standards, what's truly remarkable is the high-level consensus that's emerging around the ethical principles that should guide AI. This shared understanding is really the foundation upon which all these more detailed rules are being built. Just take a look at these principles on the slide from the OECD. They were adopted by 38 of the world's developed economies, and they have been incredibly influential. And you'll see those familiar themes we've been talking about, right? AI should be human-centered and fair, transparent and explainable, robust and secure. What this really shows is that at a high level, the world's leading democracies already agree on what we want from AI. The big debate now is just about the best way to get there. And it's also so critical to remember that AI is already being regulated by laws that are on the books today. The most significant of these by far is the EU's GDPR, the toughest data privacy law in the world. It governs how personal data, which is the lifeblood of most AI systems, can be processed. It requires a legal basis for using data, it limits data collection, and it gives people rights over automated decisions. And with those multi-billion-dollar fines, GDPR has already proven that misusing data in an AI context is a massive, massive compliance threat. This brings us to our most important takeaway. The future of AI isn't going to be shaped by algorithms alone. It will be shaped by the laws, the standards, and the values that we choose to embed within them. The algorithm doesn't decide what's fair, we do. The code itself doesn't determine accountability, our laws do. So let's just recap for a moment. The freewheeling, move fast and break things era of AI development, it is definitively over. A new, complex patchwork of global governance is rapidly taking its place. We've seen the European Union's comprehensive, top-down legal approach with the AI Act, which, through the Brussels effect, is set to become a global benchmark. We've contrasted that with the United States' voluntary, bottom-up framework from NIST, which really prioritizes flexibility and industry-led innovation. And we've also come to understand the critical underlying role of technical standards from bodies like ISO, which are creating that common language for this entire ecosystem. For anyone out there building or deploying AI, navigating this new landscape is no longer optional. It is a core strategic necessity. Be sure to tune in for our next deep dive, where we'll explore from lab to live AI risk management in the enterprise. Thank you so much for joining us today, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Tech, AI, and Beyond.